Okay.
All right. So, guys, we said I gave you hasty generalizations. What else did I give you yesterday? Inductive and deductive and just hasty generalizations? I don't think I'd gotten to the other one, had I? Okay. So, we talked about a false premise too. So some of your logic fallacies. Okay, so we have hasty generalizations. This is when you don't look at a big enough pool if you don't take a big enough sample, okay? And kind of draw a conclusion without enough information, or you haven't talked to enough people. I told you that hasty general. Why can't I spell today? Sorry.
G-E-N-E-L-I-Z.
Okay. So, like, for example, a hasty generalization. The example I used yesterday, you are trying to find something to watch on television. You have 200 channels. You look at 3 of them and see commercials, and you give up and you say, there are nothing on but commercials. Well, you only looked at 3 out of the 200. That would be a hasty generalization. Okay. All right. So then I said a false premise. We did not talk about a false premise. We talked about syllogisms in deductive reasoning. This is where the false premise comes in. Remember we said all students go to school. You are a student, therefore you go to school. Okay? Here's where you have to beware. A false premise is if you start with something like this.
Wait, didn't we? Yeah, we did talk about that.
We did? All teens are reckless?
Yeah.
Did we do that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to review, all teens are reckless. You are a teen. Therefore, you are reckless. That would be a false premise. Okay? Because are all teens reckless? No, they're not. Okay? So, I told you also that when you ever see anything like this, or hear anything like this, if somebody says all, or everyone, or no one, those are absolutes. And absolutes usually are not accurate. Okay? Absolute, because there's always an exception. If somebody's telling you things, well, everybody, have you ever said this to your parents? Well, why won't you let me go? Everybody else is. Maybe that's true, but a lot of the times it isn't, is it? Okay? So it's an absolute, and we know that we need to look for those. Often they are not true, so often it's a false premise. Okay? So then we have circumstantial evidence. That's another logic fallacy. You've probably heard this before. If you ever watch criminal shows or anything like that, or cop shows, they're talking about the detectives or the lawyers will say, well, it's only circumstantial evidence. Yeah. Okay, this can be a logic fallacy. Sometimes the circumstantial evidence is leading in the right direction, but sometimes it isn't. Just because someone's dead and the person doesn't mean that the person standing over them with the gun is the one that killed them. They might be, okay, but it's also possible that there was somebody else shooting at them and they've got a gun in their hand, or they wrestled the gun away from them and it was too late. Okay, so you have to you have to think about the circumstantial evidence. Anytime, let's say circumstantial evidence, if I find trash around Braden's desk, does it necessarily mean that Braden put it there? I could make that assumption, but it might not be true. If I wasn't paying attention, it might have been trash left from the previous class. Okay. But if only Braden sits there and I keep finding trash there, then it's probably Braden's. All right. But it's circumstantial evidence. Here's another one. It says, for example, it might, oh no, this is the same one. The scene of a murder. Okay. Now, here's my favorite. It's called mistaken causality. That's not why it's my favorite. Here's why it's my favorite. Because it's also known as post hoc, ergo propter hoc. I just like to say that. Okay. Post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Mistaken causality. Here's what it means. It means that just because something happened right before something else doesn't mean that the first thing caused the second thing. Okay. Let's say you have a big test in math tomorrow. And tonight you decide instead of studying for math, you're going to play video games. You get caught up in your video games. And then tomorrow you ace the test. The mistaken causality would be, oh, if I play video games the night before I take my math test, I'm going to ace all my math tests. Okay? Or how many of you play sports? Okay? Now, do you have any superstitions or rituals that you do? Or like you have to wear the same socks, or you have to eat the same meal before your meet or your game?
I put a penny in my shoe.
You put a penny in your shoe.
Penny I found when I won conference my first
Okay.
year. I put in my shoe.
Okay. So you have a penny. Anybody have to wear the same socks or anything like that? Or okay. Well, no, in swimming you would not. Or how about this? How many of you like to watch like football or basketball or something, the professionals or college? Okay. If your team is losing and your dad walks out to the kitchen and then all of a sudden they start scoring, are you like, Dad, you have to stay in the kitchen. They're winning again. No?
I just want to stay out of the middle.
No?
What's your fault?
Or it's my fault because I wasn't wearing my lucky shirt that day. Okay?
That is happening.
Guys, those are superstitions, but they could fall into that category of mistaken causality. None of you have ever done that?
I've done something like that on a road trip.
Yeah?
Yeah, whenever a car was passing by, I'd look at it and then it'd slow down, so my mom would go faster. That's what I thought anyway.
Yeah?
So
Okay.
I thought every time I looked at the car, it'd slow down.
It slowed down because you were looking at it? Yes, that was mistaken causality. That's a perfect example. I'll give you another couple of examples of it. Let's see. There are a lot of adults with children who believe that if they have their children vaccinated, that it could trigger autism. Okay? Well, often it happens because your first big sets of vaccinations, some of your vaccinations come right about the same time that some of the autistic traits will show up. Sometimes they show up earlier, but sometimes they don't show up until you're about 4 or 5 years old, which is about the time when you get this other big set of vaccines. And there are parents out there, there are websites that they truly believe that if you get your child vaccinated, could very possibly develop autism from it.
My mom, autism, like, why is everyone so scared of something that could possibly happen to a kid?
Because you're right. They shouldn't have to be. Okay? They shouldn't have to
My
be.
mom, my sister got a vaccine. I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
she's not letting me get it because my sister developed seizures from it.
She developed what from it?
Seizures.
Seizures?
She was off of
Okay. There are some things that people are allergic to certain things and they may not know it.
Yeah, my mom.
Okay.
was-
And you're right, there's nothing wrong. Listen, there is a stigma about autism. But there are a lot of people with autism who are very high functioning, that have no trouble whatsoever, that, but they're also, yes, you don't. Yeah. But there are parents that believe that, oh, we can't do this. And it's not just the autism, it's a whole lot of other things. Okay. There are other things that they believe, oh, well, we shouldn't vaccinate because of this or that. Okay. And there are some government conspiracy theories that believe that if we get vaccinated, that there's something in it that's marking us, that there'll be, now if you're going deep conspiracies there, that there's some kind of tracer they're putting in all of us. Yes, that they're microchipping us. Yes, yeah, yes.
Down the road is in on that.
Yeah, yes.
My mom jokes about that a lot because she knows like it makes me angry when she like jokes around things like that.
Yeah.
She always just jokes about it.
Okay, yeah.
My dad
Or-
was serious about the microchip.
Oh.
How soon we're gonna get the microchip.
But you all carry a phone.
Yeah, we all carry phones.
Yeah, so there's no. Yes. Okay, guys, I have one more example of that for you. This was my mother, guys. Hey, listen, my mother. Okay, so in my family, I may have told you about this before. My family actually has a genetic heart disease. There's one heart disease right now that they've identified genetic markers for, and my family has it. It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. No one in our family that we knew had it until my youngest sister was born, and as an infant, her heart was enlarged. Okay? It is a genetic illness that you don't just carry, you will develop it at some point. You might be 80 years old, but you will develop it.
Yeah, there's a genetic disorder in my mom's side of the family where it's like really bad headaches.
Okay?
So far, my youngest brother has started getting it. I don't know if me or my.
Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of things like that. But what happened was, because it was something that both one of the parents would have, whenever they took my sister down for her usual exams, they would always ask, which one of you has this? And both my parents were like, neither of us do. Well, one of you has to have it. Okay. So my brother then was 10 when he was diagnosed. This was my youngest sister and my brother, who are child 4 and 5 for my parents. Okay. So here's the other part of it that made my mother go into this mistaken causality. Okay. My parents have I don't know if you ever heard of this in biology. With your blood type, you have an Rh factor, a negative or a positive. Okay. My parents, and there's a problem with the Rh factor if the mother has negative blood and the father has positive blood. Because what can happen is if the mother, during the birth of the baby at some point or something's going on, if the mother is carrying a child that's positive like the father, the mother's negative blood can then develop antibodies to it. And then the second child, if that second child is a positive, those antibodies can attack the fetus and cause problems. Well, my parents have that problem. There is an injection for that now, but they didn't have it until my mother had her third child. And she got that injection after she gave birth to her third baby. And then it was her fourth and fifth babies who had this heart condition. So my mother believed for a long time that this was some kind of effect from this injection. Okay. She believed that this injection, especially because my youngest sister had it the worst. Okay. And then my brother, it was not quite as bad. She believed it was that injection. Okay. Well, it turns out when she was first of all, one of my sisters, my next sister was diagnosed with it in her 30s. And then our mother was diagnosed with it finally in her 60s. Okay. But mom was sure that this is what had caused it. okay? It wasn't, but she fell into that mistaken causality trap, all right? We're out of time, aren't we? Not quite, a couple more minutes, okay. So post hoc ergo propter hoc, mistaken causality, when you assume that this thing that happened first caused the second thing, when really there's no other evidence for it, okay? So, you know what? We will finish these tomorrow, and we will do the logic, the fallacy worksheet, okay? We'll do that tomorrow also. Don't worry about doing it today. Okay.